Ladies and gentlemen, life has a funny way of whispering truths to us when we least expect it. One of those truths is this: discipline creates wealth, and delay destroys it. I've met men who started with nothing but a pocketful of dreams and a willingness to show up every single day. One farmer I knew woke up before dawn, year after year, planting seed after seed. He wasn't wealthy in money when he began, but he was wealthy in discipline. And because of that, his harvest grew, not just in his field, but in his family, his community, and eventually in his financial success. Contrast that with the young man who said, "I'll do it tomorrow." Tomorrow turned into next week into next year, and now he is still waiting while opportunity moves on. You see, wealth doesn't wait for the hesitant. It rewards the disciplined. Discipline is not a punishment. It's a gift you give yourself. It's waking up early when you feel like sleeping in. It's putting a little aside when you'd rather spend it all today. It's learning a new skill while the world tells you to be entertained instead. Discipline builds bridges where delay builds excuses. And here's the truth: wealth isn't just about money. Wealth is health. Wealth is strong relationships. Wealth is a mind filled with wisdom, not worry. Wealth is a heart that believes tomorrow can be better because you acted today. Every great story you've heard, the single mother raising her children into leaders, the young immigrant starting with nothing but a bag of hope, the worker who became an owner, they all share one common thread: the discipline to keep going when delay looks easier. My friends, change will come. It always does. The question is, will it find you prepared, or will it find you procrastinating? The difference between a man who thrives and a man who survives is simply this: one practiced discipline, the other practiced delay. So tonight I ask you, no, I challenge you, stand guard at the door of your own future. Take responsibility for your choices. Start today, not tomorrow. Begin now, not someday. Because discipline creates wealth and delay destroys it. And when history looks back at your life, let it say this: here was someone who chose discipline, who embraced change, who believed in a better future, and then built it with their own two hands. The future belongs to the disciplined. The future belongs to you. My friends, let me tell you something that has echoed through centuries of human achievement. Discipline is the seed of success. If you plant it, nurture it, and guard it, it will grow into a tree so strong that no storm can bring it down. And just like a farmer who plants in spring and harvests in fall, life responds to those who are willing to put in the work long before the reward appears. Discipline is the small decision you make every single day that quietly builds your destiny. You may not notice it at first, because the reward is not instant. That's why so many people ignore it. But if you look closely at the people you admire, the ones who inspire you, the ones who turn nothing into something, you'll find a pattern. They all practiced discipline long before anyone applauded them. Think about it. Discipline is setting your alarm for 5 in the morning, even though your bed whispers, "Stay a little longer." Discipline is choosing to open a book instead of turning on the television. It is putting a little money aside when you'd rather spend it all today. It is practicing your craft, your business, your skill day after day, even when nobody is watching. That's discipline. And it is the seed that always produces fruit. See, here's the truth: you don't need to be extraordinary to build an extraordinary life. You only need to be consistent. And consistency is nothing more than discipline in action. A farmer doesn't check the soil every morning to see if the seed grew overnight. He doesn't dig it up and says, "Nothing's happening." No, he waters it, he protects it, he nurtures it, he trusts the process, and eventually the seed breaks through the soil. That is exactly what happens when you live a life of discipline. Now, discipline creates wealth, but not just financial wealth. Let's talk about the other forms of wealth that discipline creates. Discipline creates health. You can't buy health at the store. You can't borrow it from a neighbor, and you can't cheat your way into it. Health is the harvest of disciplined choices. What you eat, how you move, when you rest. If you treat your body with discipline, it will reward you with energy, strength, and vitality. Discipline creates strong relationships. It takes discipline to listen instead of interrupting. It takes discipline to forgive when you'd rather hold a grudge. It takes discipline to invest time and attention into the people who matter to you. And if you do that, what grows is a family, a partnership, a circle of friends that becomes wealth beyond any bank account. Discipline creates wisdom. You see, wisdom doesn't come from wishing, it comes from learning. It comes from the discipline of reading, studying, asking questions, and being humble enough to admit what you don't know. Knowledge compounds just like money, and discipline is what keeps you investing in your mind every single day. And yes, discipline creates financial wealth too, because money doesn't multiply in the hands of the careless, it multiplies in the hands of the disciplined. Every dollar saved, every skill mastered, every hour of focused work, it all adds up. And one day, you look around and realize you are no longer surviving, you are thriving. That's the power of discipline. But here's the part most people miss. Discipline doesn't feel like success when you're doing it. It feels like a sacrifice. It feels like saying no to dessert, saying no to spending, saying no to comfort. But what you are really saying no to is regret, because the pain of discipline is far lighter than the pain of regret. Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. I once met a man who told me he regretted not starting a business when he was young. He said, "If only I had started back then, I'd be free today." I asked him, "Why didn't you?" And his answer was simple: I delayed. Delay is the opposite of discipline. Delay says, "I'll do it tomorrow." But discipline says, "I'll do it now because my future deserves it." The beauty of discipline is that it doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks for persistence. You don't have to be the best in the room. You only have to be consistent enough to keep showing up. Over time, the disciplined person outruns the talented person who gave up. Over time, discipline beats genius. Over time, discipline takes the ordinary individual and makes them extraordinary. So remember this: every day you have a choice to plant seeds of discipline or seeds of delay. One grows into wealth, health, wisdom, and happiness. The other grows into regret, excuses, and missed opportunities. And life is fair enough to give you the harvest of whichever seed you choose to plant. My friends, if discipline is the seed of success, then delay is the thief that steals it before it ever has a chance to grow. Delay is subtle. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It says, "You've got time. Do it tomorrow. Start next week. Try later." And the tragedy is that so many lives, so many dreams, so many fortunes have been buried not because people failed, but because they delayed. Delay is one of the most dangerous habits a person can ever entertain because it feels harmless in the moment. You put something off for one day and it seems like nothing changes. You skip a workout, you avoid making that phone call, you delay saving that first dollar, and life looks the same the next morning. But here's the truth: delay doesn't destroy you overnight. It destroys you slowly, quietly, piece by piece, until one day you look back and realize years have passed, and so have your chances. I once spoke with a man who told me he had dreamed of writing a book. He had the idea, the story, the passion. He said, "I'll start when things settle down. I'll begin when the timing is right." But years rolled by, and the book was never written, not because he didn't have the talent, but because delay kept him prisoner. And while he waited for the perfect time, someone else with less talent but more discipline wrote the book and changed the world. That's what delay does. It takes your dream and gives it to somebody else who acted. Think of opportunity like a train pulling into a station. It opens its doors and waits for you to step in. But the doors don't stay open forever. If you delay, if you hesitate, that train will leave without you. And once it's gone, it may never come back in the same way again. Delay convinces us that opportunities are unlimited, but they're not. They come and they go. And if you don't move, they move on. Now, I want you to think about the cost of delay in health. You know you need to exercise. You know you need to eat better. But the delay says, start next Monday. Next Monday is next month. Next month becomes next year. And suddenly you're dealing with problems that could have been prevented years ago. Delay robbed you of vitality, of strength, of years you could have lived with energy and freedom. Consider delay in relationships. You know you need to say, "I love you." You know you need to forgive, to call, to spend time. But the delay says, "They'll understand. I'll do it later." And then one day later is no longer possible because the moment passed, the door closed, the person was gone. Delay steals not just success, but also the chance to love deeply and live fully with the people who matter most. And of course, delay in money is one of the greatest thieves of all. How many people have said, "I'll start saving when I make more"? They delay the discipline of putting aside just a little, and as the years roll by, the magic of compounding never works for them. Someone else who started small but started early ends up with wealth. Delays cost them not thousands, but millions. Here's the trick: delay always disguises itself as comfort. It tells you, rest a little longer. Enjoy yourself now. You can get serious later, but later never comes. Delay is like a shadow that follows you until you stop walking and turn around to face it. Once you do, you realize that what felt like safety was actually stealing your future. I've met young people who told me, I'll get serious about my future when I'm older. And I've met older people who told me, if only I had started when I was younger. That's the cruel game of delay. It makes the young waste their youth and the old regret their past. The truth is, there's never a perfect time to start. The only time you can count on is now. But let me tell you something powerful. Delay can rob you only if you allow it. Opportunity is everywhere. Waiting, watching, asking, who is ready? And readiness is not about talent. It's not about luck. It's not even about resources. It's about refusing to delay when the door opens. Life is short. Seasons pass quickly. Opportunities do not stand still. And the difference between the life you dream of and the life you settle for is often nothing more than whether you chose to delay or chose to act. My friends, let me remind you of a timeless truth. Ordinary people achieve extraordinary things. It's not the giants of history alone who shape the future. It's not the heroes carved in stone or the legends written in books. It's men and women who look in the mirror and say, I may not be special, but I will be disciplined, I will be consistent, and I will not quit. That decision is what turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. We often imagine that greatness belongs only to those born with rare gifts. We think of champions as people with superhuman talent, leaders as people with destiny written on their foreheads. But when you study their lives, when you strip away the glamour, you'll see something remarkable. They were ordinary people who made extraordinary choices. They didn't wait for the perfect background. They didn't wait for permission. And they didn't wait for life to hand them success. They started where they were, with what they had, and they built their future brick by brick. Think of the young student who struggles in school. On paper, she doesn't stand out. She's not top of her class, not the most confident, not from a wealthy family, but she decides that every day she will read one chapter more, ask one question more, practice 1 hour more. Years later, she's the first in her family to graduate, then to lead, then to inspire others who thought they couldn't. She didn't begin extraordinary. Discipline made her so. Or picture the worker in a small town, the kind of person nobody notices. He earns just enough to get by, but he makes a choice. Instead of wasting every paycheck, he saves a little, invests a little, learns a little. Year after year, his neighbors laugh, saying, "What's the point of saving a few dollars?" But decades later, he owns businesses, employs others, and provides opportunities for families who once thought they'd never have a chance. That's not magic. That's the extraordinary born from ordinary discipline. History itself is filled with such stories. Leaders who began as clerks, inventors who began in small workshops, artists who began with no recognition. What made them extraordinary was not luck, but perseverance. It was the willingness to keep going when nobody else believed. Take steps so small they seemed invisible, yet taken long enough. Those steps became a journey that changed the world. And the beauty of this truth is that it is available to every single one of us. You don't need to be the smartest in the room. You don't need to have the most money. And you don't need a famous last name. What you need is the courage to be consistent, the humility to learn, and the discipline to keep moving forward when others stop. Ordinary people become extraordinary by saying yes to responsibility. They don't blame the world. They don't point fingers. They don't wait for someone to rescue them. They say, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And those words, repeated and lived, create a power that transforms lives. Think about it. Extraordinary is not a one-time event. It's not one big moment of glory. Extraordinary is a series of small victories stacked on top of each other. Waking up early, saving instead of spending, studying instead of wasting time, forgiving instead of resenting, working when others quit. Those decisions may look ordinary on the surface, but together they write an extraordinary story. I once knew a man who worked in a factory. Day after day, he punched the clock, did his job, and went home. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. But quietly he was learning, quietly he was saving, quietly he was preparing. One day, when an opportunity opened, he was ready. He didn't hesitate, he didn't delay, he stepped forward. And within years, he owned the very factory he once worked in. People called it luck. But it wasn't luck. It was an ordinary man who had prepared himself through years of discipline, ready for an extraordinary opportunity. You see, the gap between ordinary and extraordinary is smaller than we think. It's often just one decision, one act of courage, one moment of persistence. Most people stop at ordinary because they believe extraordinary is reserved for someone else. But those who keep going, those who refuse to give up, they discover that extraordinary things were waiting for them all along. So let me tell you, every time you feel small, every time you feel average, every time you feel unseen, remember, that is where extraordinary begins. It begins in the unseen hours, in the unnoticed effort, in the choices that seem too small to matter but end up changing everything. My friends, has a simple but unshakable law: the future rewards responsibility. Every choice we make, every action we take, every discipline we practice, it all echoes forward into tomorrow. The future is not an accident, it is built. And the builders are those who take responsibility for their lives. Responsibility means saying, if it's to be, it's up to me. It means refusing to wait for luck, refusing to blame circumstances, refusing to hand the steering wheel of your life to anyone else. Responsibility is not a burden, it is power. The moment you accept full responsibility, you step into the driver's seat of your own destiny. I've seen people who spent years waiting for change. They waited for the economy to improve, for their boss to notice, for the government to fix things, for the right person to come into their lives. And while they waited, time passed, opportunities slipped away, and regret grew. Why? Because the future doesn't reward waiting, it rewards responsibility. Responsibility is the willingness to say, I will learn the skills, I will wake up early, I will save when it's easier to spend, I will act today so I don't regret tomorrow. And when you live that way, life rewards you, not immediately, not overnight, but surely, inevitably, like a harvest waiting for the farmer who planted seeds in season. Consider the student who says, it's my responsibility to study, not my teacher's responsibility to push me. That student creates a future filled with opportunities. Or the young worker who says, I won't wait to be promoted, I'll prepare myself as if the position were already mine. That worker steps into leadership while others are still complaining. Or the parent who says, it's my responsibility to set an example, raise my children with values, with discipline, with love. That parent shapes not just their family's future, but generations to come. Responsibility creates freedom. At first it sounds backward. How can responsibility, which sounds heavy, create freedom? But look closer. The person who takes responsibility for their health enjoys the freedom of energy, of movement, of years added to their life. The person who takes responsibility for their finances enjoys the freedom to give, to travel, to live without the chains of debt. The person who takes responsibility for their growth enjoys the freedom to rise higher, seize opportunities, to stand with confidence in any room. Responsibility is the price of freedom, and the future pays back that price with abundance. Now let's talk about the opposite. Irresponsibility. It always seems easy in the beginning, but it carries a heavy cost later. The student who ignores studying, the worker who avoids effort, the parent who neglects guidance. They may feel free in the moment, but that false freedom becomes chains in the future. Irresponsibility says, not today. But the future always answers, then not tomorrow either. I once met a man who told me his biggest regret was not taking responsibility sooner. He said, for years I blamed my boss, my upbringing, my circumstances. And then one day I realized those excuses never changed anything. The day I stopped pointing fingers was the day my life started moving forward. That's the secret. Excuses delay us, but responsibility moves us. Responsibility also means being prepared for change, because change will come, whether we like it or not. The seasons shift, the world evolves, technology advances, markets rise and fall. The question is not whether change will come, but whether you will be ready. And readiness is born out of responsibility. The farmer cannot stop winter from coming, but he can take responsibility to plant in spring, tend in summer, and harvest in fall. Then, when winter arrives, he is prepared. In the same way, when life brings challenges, an unexpected setback, a sudden loss, a door that closes, responsibility is what allows you to adapt, to grow, to find another path. Doesn't mean everything will be easy. It means you will not be powerless. Responsibility puts the tools in your hands to carve out a future, even when the present seems uncertain. And remember this. Responsibility is not just about the big decisions. It's about the small daily choices that seem invisible but add up to everything. Waking up on time, showing up when you said you would, following through on promises, paying attention to the details. These are the acts of responsibility that build a foundation strong enough to carry the weight of a great future. When you practice responsibility, people notice. Opportunities come your way, Not because of luck, but because responsibility makes you trustworthy. Leaders are chosen, doors are opened, partnerships are offered. Not to the careless, not to the ones who wait, to the ones who demonstrate responsibility day in and day out. The future belongs to those who say, I will own my choices, I will own my mistakes, I will own my progress. Because responsibility doesn't mean you'll never fail. It means when you fail, you take the lesson, adjust your path, and keep moving forward stronger than before. Ladies and gentlemen, when we look at life in its simplest terms, four great truths stand before us. Discipline is the seed of success. Delay is the thief of opportunity. Ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things, and the future rewards responsibility. Together, these truths form the foundation of a life not just lived, but lived well. Discipline creates wealth, not only the kind of wealth that fills your pockets, but the wealth that fills your heart, your health, your mind, your relationships. Delay, on the other hand, whispers promises it cannot keep. It tells us tomorrow will be easier, when in truth tomorrow is built only by what we do today. And let us never forget, the extraordinary is not reserved for the chosen few. It belongs to those willing to persist, to practice, to prepare. Ordinary men and women, people like you and me, can rise to heights they never imagined simply by refusing to give up. But above all, the future is not a mystery. It is not something handed down by fate. It is something we shape. The future rewards responsibility. It belongs to those who step forward, take ownership, and say, I will do what must be done. So my call to you tonight is simple, but it is urgent. Plant discipline, refuse delay, believe that extraordinary things are possible for you, and carry the weight of responsibility with pride, because that weight will turn into wings. And always remember these words: discipline creates wealth, delay destroys it. The choice is yours, the time is now, and the future is waiting.